Today we'll be painting a toucan, bursting with tropical color and personality. And the best part, we'll be creating this entire painting using 3 primary colors by DaVinci, a red, a yellow, and a blue. Get ready to see how these simple hues can bring this exotic bird to life. Let's grab our brushes and dive into the world of toucans. Materials today are our 3 primary colors by DaVinci, Red Rose Deep, Arylide Yellow FGL, and Phthalo Blue, 100% cotton 140 pound, 8x10 arches block. I have the toucan already traced. I have fresh paint on my palette for mixing. I also have this palette, which I used on a previous painting. I just didn't want to get rid of all of that pigment. It's the same colors. I'm also going to use a number 10 silver black velvet and probably some other brushes as I go, which I will mention at the time. I'm going to start with the yellow, so I'm going to mix up a little petal of some pale light value yellow, and I'm going to go for the beak. I'm not going to worry about the background, I'm going to do that last, but I am going to try to keep highlights. So this beak has a highlight here. I'm going to make sure that stays light, and I'm going to put yellow on the whole beak. Taking some of that off. Okay. Get some yellow on the eye. And it looks like I didn't draw a line right here. I'm going to go on to the back. So right over the eye, I'm going to dab out the middle of the eye because it has a catch light on it. I'm going to wet this. This has a highlight here and here. So right down the middle of the throat, I'm going to put some yellow. And this is creating a little map for us. This down here is all dark. It's getting a lot of yellow. And I'm going to skip the branch. I'm just going to do the bird. Actually, let's just go ahead and put the yellow on. I'm going to skip the little claw because it has a highlight and it's mostly highlighted anyway, so just leave it blank. There's quite a bit of yellow in this branch, but I'm going to keep it light valued. Add more water as we get up here. And these branches will be soft in the background. Okay, I'm going to continue with this body. I'll get the pigment on in a light value and then come back with a darker value. Okay, now to make this darker, I'm going to get some fresh blue and put a lot of it in the middle. And some fresh red. I'm going to get some more red. I want to turn this purple. It's getting there. More red. Okay, now we've got some purple. And now this is where I add some yellow to tone down the purple. And it's got a greenish tint. Not anymore. I'm going to add some more blue and some more red because I want a lot of pigment. Okay, and that's got a purpley tint. So I'm going to get a little more yellow to tone it down. And I'm ready. I'll just start down here. This is all very dark down here. And this doesn't even come close to getting it done, so we're just going to have to keep building it up. Okay, this has, I'm going to neaten up this line. Neaten this line a little. Okay. And I'm going to soften this with a damp brush. And now I'm going to add more pigment. More red. And some more yellow. And wet, I'm going to work on darkening around this eye. So I've got the line established. Now I'm just ready to kind of play with the pigment, get the values done. Okay, I'll just let this come all the way down. Get that purple in here. I'm just going to take some of this blue and put it on here. We can mix on the paper, and it's a lot more effective than mixing on the palette because you don't have to add a lot of water to it. So now I'm grabbing the red and adding it to the blue right on the paper over the branch. Okay. And when you're looking at your own painting, you probably can't see it here, but you can, when you're looking at your own painting, you can see the very subtle color shifts. And I'm just going to make sure I darken this even more. We're going to have a lot of contrast with the eye and with the throat. I'm going to do the eye, and I'm just going to add a little bit of blue for now. So blue right inside here. I'm going to go out a little further. Okay, it's time to dry it. Okay, next step will be to add the dark on the beak. There is a little bit of a green, I guess, reflection. So I'm going to mix a little bit of green right here, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue, and I'm going to add the green right here at the top. Let's just put it on the whole thing. You can also see when I'm doing this how glazing works. So when I glaze over this dark, right here at the line of the, I guess it's the opening, you can see the difference in color. It turned it a little bit brown. Okay, I'm going to use some of this dark right over this green. Let's mix some more. Normally I don't contaminate my paint, my 3 blobs of paint so much, but I'm trying to do this in a half an hour. So I'm contaminating away. Okay, we'll just work with that purple since it's going on top of green, and we'll see how that looks. Just leave a little hint of that green showing. Now we can do this, and I'm going to get my brush as clean as possible and wet this. So start thinking of what you're painting as a series of shapes. If you take what you think you know, what your brain knows about a toucan, and you try to paint a toucan, it'll be a lot more difficult than if you just break it down into some shapes and then paint those shapes according to values and shadows and highlights. Let's take some of this green and put it in here. Put it down here under the chin. There is a highlight right here, so I'm going to stay away from this front part of the neck. There's a highlight up here, so I'm going to stay away from there. And now I'm going to make a deeper green. And add that in here, going up under the chin. And in just a second, I'm going to add a little bit of red to this, because the toucan doesn't have this bright green on it. I think it's probably a pale yellow neck, but the shadow of the bill is, the green is reflecting on it through the shadow of the bill or something. I don't know. But I'm just looking at what I see in the photo and trying to replicate it. And now the middle of this is the deepest. Some green. This blue comes down here. It's pretty dark down here. And it's dark under the chin. Damp brush. I'm going to use my paper towel on this highlight. Okay, now I'm going to tone this green down a little bit by adding a little bit of this orangey color. And then in here we have some little shadows from the feathers, from the layers of feathers. Okay. Let's work on the eye. I'm going to get a number 4. And I'm going to take this dark and make it gray, blackish gray like we had before, making a purple, and then adding yellow to dull it down. And that's a pretty good dark. I'm going to flip this upside down because I have wet stuff and I don't want to drag my hand through it. Now I'm going to go around the whole eye on the outside. And I'm going to do a pupil in the middle. I'm going to make that darker. Add more blue. I like to get what I want it to be on there in a lighter value, and then if I like it, I'm happy with it, I can then darken it. So that turned that purpley. I'm going to add blue. I want it to lean more towards gray. And now I'm going to add more red. And then more yellow, but not as much yellow. Okay, so that's a really dark blue, and that'll work. Now the blue around the rim of the eye is sort of gone at the bottom and only shows at the top. And then with a 0, I'm going to just pull a little bit of that black pigment into the blue. I'll add a little more on the outside to make up for what I took away. Okay, and then when this is dry, I can add a little white paint. We are getting there, people. Okay, so since all of these things are wet, I'm going to work on this branch. This is dry and this is dry, so it won't touch anything wet. So I'm going to wet this branch. And what I see on this branch, I just went over the claw, is a base of yellowy green with some darker colors like browns and grays and blacks. So I will add in some brown. So I'm going to try to turn this brown. So now we've got a green. I'm not going to obliterate all of this mix because I'm probably going to need that. So I'm making a green, and I'm going to add some red to it and hopefully turn it brown. A little more red, a little more yellow, and then some more blue to turn it brown, darker brown. Okay, I'm going to get a little more red. Let's just start over. Red, yellow, and some blue. Okay, yellow. Got me green. Sometimes it's like this. You have to just persevere. I think I need a little more yellow. Okay, now we're getting there. I'm going to add just a tad more blue and darken it. There we go. So what I'm going to do here is add this color in on this branch, and then I'm going to add salt. And then I'm going to also drop in water drops. Get some of this green. I don't want it quite so dark up here by the beak. I just noticed that it's got a highlight. So down here by the beak is okay to be dark, but not up here. Greens and browns on this branch. Now different values of those colors. Some yellows in here. The yellow's pretty much obliterated. Some blues in here, especially here by the tummy. There's a shadow here by the tummy. And then there's a dark shadow on the underside of the branch. So we're putting more pigment in there. I am ignoring this little piece of leaf. I'm going to do something else there. So if you have it on there, you can keep it there or you can ignore it. Maybe watch to the end to see what we do. Okay, so that's kind of neat. I keep dropping paint on it. I mean, water. I'm going to add some of this yellow up here. Make that a little more green. It is okay if you're going out of the lines. We're going to do something really cool in the background. Okay, get out your salt. I'm going to add the salt to the lighter areas, staying away from the shadow. It might have been too wet. It's just a wait and see game. So put your salt on kind of right up in here and then in the middle of this one. And if it's not doing anything, if it just dissolves, wait a couple minutes and add a little bit more salt. Now my paper is getting damp and I'm going to drop in some water drops. I can see the salt starting to work right here. I'm going to add some water drops, but with color, some red. It looks like my highlight here is just going to do what it wants. And I'm going to add a little more salt because I think I put it on when it was too wet. I like what the water drops are doing here and here. So keep watching it, and as it dries, do stuff to it. While I'm waiting for this to happen, I'm going to do the eye, the area around this eye. I'm going to get it wet. If you do go over the black, it is going to come off a little bit around the eye, which kind of is nice because we want some more dimension there. So I'm going to get that wet and try to coax some of that pigment out. I'm going to add some of this orange pigment around the top. I'm going to make a little bit more. And I'm out of yellow. Okay, Okay, there's a little bit of orange that we can drop in right above this eye and kind of over here. And with a damp brush, I'm going to soak some of that up. Clean, damp brush. And now I'm going to add a little more orange to this. With a clean, damp brush. And I'm going to add some yellow. Just some yellow. Right over here. Brighten this up a little. And up here. And then the yellow will also make the other pigments stay put. Okay? Now I would do this, but this is wet now, so I'm going to leave that to dry. We're leaving this to dry, and now that I stopped looking at it, I can see what's happening, and I really like it. So once this is done doing its thing, I'm going to go over it with the glaze of green. My painting is all dry. I've gotten all the salt off, and I love the effect that it had. Now, I said at the last break, that we were going to glaze this with some green. So I've got kind of a muddy looking, a dull looking yellow that I'll add a little green to, blue to. And I'm going to just glaze that right on, right over the top. Get some more yellow in it. Now for these up here, I'm just going to put some of this green over it like this. And we will do the dark value for this when we are done with the background. And I'm going to smooth this out so it doesn't look funny in the background. So now the background has some light greens and some dark greens, so I'm going to get lots of blue out. And I'm going to just incorporate all of this stuff that's on the palette into the rest of this blue. Okay, I'm going to make some green over here. That is one kind of green. This is sort of a warm olivey green. And then over here, I'll make a yellowy green. And add more yellow to that. There's a yellowy bright green. And then over here, I'll add yellow to this. And it's more of a blue turquoisey green that I'll add a little red to turn it a dark green. Okay, and then we have some leftover blue to mix in as we see fit. This branch is still wet, so I'm going to flip this around and do this area right here. And I'm going to work on dry paper. I'm going to get some of this light green. And you see we have a shape here between the branch and this. So we'll just make this shape how it looks in the reference photo. Use that reference photo as a guide for values. And I'm going to kind of stay away from the branch. I do want it to be blurry, so it's okay if it bleeds a little bit onto there. I'm going to add some of this blue up here and some of this red up here. To kind of vignette the whole thing, I left the branch out. That looks pretty good. And now I can come between this branch and do sort of the same green. I'm going to be careful of the beak. I'm going to lift. Get some of this dark. Now I can work on that. I'm going to lift this off of this branch. Some yellow on there. This looks a little funny, so I'm going to just fix that. Damp brush to lift. Lift this. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to use and get some more yellow because this all became one color again. Now I'll come down around the side, around the beak, and then down here it becomes very dark. Okay, now I've got some reds and purples. And I'm going to add some yellows and see how that turns. With the red and the yellow added, it turns a dark grayish green. And if this bleeds onto the branch, I'll be okay. I'm going to go right over this little thing that we're leaving off. I'm going to leave these little knobbies on here because branches are not perfectly smooth. I'm going to add some more yellow. Boy, I really went through that yellow, didn't I? So now I'm going to just tap in some clean water. I think I'm going to leave that smooth. And now I can do back here. First I'm going to get some more yellow. Now back here we have some dark green and then some light green. And then that light green is dark enough to highlight the highlight in the throat. That's very yellowy. Add some blue to it. And that comes all the way down. And this on this side too. And now I'm going to add some dark into this green and put in here. So when you add red or purple to green, you're going to get a darker green, a darker hue, and a darker value. Now this over here is sort of matching this, so I'll just bring this over here. I need to add a really dark right about in here. I'm going to do this over. Now this branch has a dark value from about here all the way down there. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in while this is wet. And I'm going to soften it right here. Damp brush. And another damp brush. There. And I like that. I'm going to go ahead and add the water drops again. I think I'll add just a few in there. And I'll let it dry. Now while this is a little bit wet, I'm going to scrunch up a paper towel and do this. And get some of that pigment off, but with texture. And that can just imply foliage. And I think what I'll do is, now that it is a little bit damp, I'm going to splat in some of this green. This sort of yellowy blue green. More water, more green. And then I'm going to make it a little darker by adding some red, maybe a little more blue. Okay. I'm holding the paintbrush sideways and guarding against the splats with my hand so that I don't get the rest of this splatted. I took a little bit of this off with an Eradicator brush. It's very ambiguous what I've done here, so I'm going to just kind of clean it up. There's a big shadow on the feet. It's like they're just coming out of a shadowy area. It's kind of dark. I'm going to add a little green to that. And I'm going to add a little bit of blue to this claw. The blue is going to be the highlight. There's another little claw, and then there's a claw showing behind. It's like the back part of the back claw is showing back there. Okay, I'm going to just dab in a little bit of this dark. I'm not going to think about this too hard. Just suggesting it is good enough. I'll go over it with, to show some wrinkles. And I think that might be good. I'm going to work on this branch up here. See, I need more blue. I need to make a very dark value right here. So let's mix a blue and a red. Let's mix a blue and a green. Sorry, blue and a yellow. And add a little bit of red to it. Okay, we've got a nice dark green, and I'm going to add it right here. going to go over the line for the bill. I'm going to add a little red to this. And now this is the highlighted part. And so I'm going to make this part of the background a little bit darker so that this is highlighted. More water. And then this part of this branch, sorry, no, that's not true. This branch is not here. I left that one out. And now this one is very light. And it goes like that, and then like that. So then I can add in this color, and I can be careful around the beak and blend it in. Clear water and blend that in. There is give this just a little more interest, I'm going to put a little V. Fix this. I'm going to then come over here and try to make this match that a little better, so it doesn't look like just something is hanging out the top of the beak. I'm going to use my bigger brush and blend that out. Now I'm going to soften that so that it fades away into the background like a soft focus. Same with this. So you put it on and then you make it fade away. Okay, let's do the eye. I have some Dr. Martens Bleedproof white. And I'm looking at the highlight on the eye in the reference photo. I'm going to use my number 0 and add a couple little white things. I'm going to get a little bit of white and put it in the blue, kind of up against the black. Just scooch it on there. Where I see the lines are a little bit jaggedy, where I don't want them to be that way, I'm going to just sort of soften them away and straighten them out. Now this highlight is not here anymore. And then there's that hard line there. Easily fixed. I really like this. That eye looks really good. Now let's do this. So we need that black back again. I'm just going to take this plate that I had. It's the same colors. You're going to make a purple and then tone it down with some yellow. There is a highlight right here. Sometimes if you just put everything together, you're going to get the color you want. Okay, I'm going to add some of this pigment down at the bottom of the beak. And leave this part as a highlight. There's a little highlight right there. I'm going to add some more pigment in here. And then for this, before I say anything, I'm going to dry this. I want to make this beak a little more vibrant. So I'm going to add a little more yellow in here and a little more red. I want to get right in here. More of this. Get more yellow in this mix and water it down. And I'm going to come up here. It just needed another layer. It needed a little more color. Don't forget to leave that highlight right here. Clean down brush. And now I want to add the red. There's some red right here. Of course, I'm out of red. Let's get that and this. I'm going to wick my brush and go right across the top a little ways. Okay. And now this black patch on the tip of the beak needs to be a little darker over here. So grab some of your dark that you made with your purple plus yellow and add a little more dark to it right at the tip, going about 2/3 of the way, and then I'm just going to soften. I'm going to use my damp brush and bring some clean water into that dark pigment. Okay, and once that's dried, we can do the line on the mouth. Now the final thing is to do the little line where the beak, the two parts of the beak come together. I'm going to wet the whole bottom with clean water with my soft brush. And then with my number 4, I'm going to get some of this orangey color and wick, and I'm going to draw it right along the top of that line. I'm going to get a little bit of this purple. Just in little spots, add a little bit of that purple. And then on the dry paper, I'm going to just add a little bit of a dark line right there. And now I'm just going to add a little bit of this pink right up here at the top. And I'm going to soften it with a damp brush. Soften this a little bit. And then so I don't get a weird line with a damp brush, or clean water, I'm going to go across the whole thing. And then right here, I'm going to add some of this orange and bring it up the beak. Get some of this red. And then to get rid of those little blooms, with a damp brush, just soften them out. So with 3 colors and 4 brushes, I think we did a pretty good job getting a toucan down on paper. Now I could spend another hour deepening values, using the Eradicator brush to lift and straighten out lines, but I think that this is pretty darn good for how much time we've spent on this. I hope that you learned something and that you can take what you learned here into your next watercolor painting. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.